Remember I said before that we have a bright future as Christians? You know how I know we have a bright future? Because as followers of Jesus, as people who believe in God and believe that Jesus, God's Son, God sent him to walk on the earth, to live a perfect life, to die not a death that he deserved, but that we deserve. And not only die on that cross, but rise again. We know that not only the good happenings in our life are purposeful, but also the negative happenings in our life are purposeful. I'm going to say that again because this is powerful. As people who believe in Jesus, who follow Jesus, who know that God is for us and not against us because of the finished work of Jesus on dying on a cross and being raised again, not only are the positive events of our life purposeful, but we also see the negative events of our life as purposeful. Think about this. Does anybody want persecution? Not if you've ever experienced it. Sometimes people in America, especially churchy people, which I know you guys aren't that, I love that about you guys. Sometimes churchy people are like, oh yeah, to be persecuted for Jesus would be so cool. That can only be said by somebody who's never experienced. I mean, I was in India two and a half months ago. And I was in South India, and we were ministering to about 500 pastors, and there was a number of pastors there about my age, and I'm pretty young, I think, thank God. And and they were from an area in India called Orissa. Now, if you follow, there was a severe persecution in Orissa about 2.5 years ago. 7,000 Christians were killed, churches and houses were burned. And I was sitting there talking to this young pastor. He was newly married. He had 2 small kids, and he lifted up his shirt. He showed me whip marks and burn marks. And I was just like I can't even fathom how you would handle that. He said, to be honest with you, it was God's grace, and the church has never been stronger than this. See, we live in America. And in America, when things are good, we're like, it's great. When things are bad, we feel forsaken. Because we don't really know a whole lot of adversity in America. I mean, listen, I realize we're in a bad economy right now. But America in a bad economy is a thriving economy in the other 2/3 of the world. Us in a bad economy is still probably the 3rd best economy in the world. So put that into perspective. I mean, listen, I'm not trying to say that people who are struggling and you don't have a job, I'm not trying to diminish those concerns at all. But the reality is us in a severe recession is uber profitable. We still go into the Safeway and there's still food on the shelves. Yeah, I know going to get gasoline, and a lot of you guys live in the city, so you guys don't have to worry about that. But you see people going to get gas in their car, and you're just like, $4 a gallon. I mean, we're getting persecuted, but the rest of the world has been paying $4 a gallon for a really long time. I'm not diminishing. I filled up my VW, and it was like $60. Like, jeez, I bought a Volkswagen. You know what I mean? That's supposed to be $40 max. See, we're so used to anything that's not total ease, feeling like, oh, But the reality is, as Christians, we realize that the negative events of our life are just as purposeful as the positive events. Nobody wanted the persecution. Nobody said, oh, this is great, let's get persecuted. Let's have this guy Saul stalking us. I mean, there are places in the country, think about this, there are places in the world where, like, we all just came here, right? We just rented the building, put the sign out. We have a website. There's places in the world today where people are going to church and they're hoping that nobody's watching who's going into that building so that they can write it down and go and freeze your assets and harass your family. I mean, can you imagine what that would be like? We're all here and all of a sudden there's knocks at the door and there's people with machetes because we're actually just here studying the Bible. I mean, that's going on in the globe today. And the early church did not want this, but what was God doing in the persecution? He was getting the church out of Jerusalem because he wanted them to be his witnesses in Judea and Samaria to the ends of the earth. But they weren't doing it. So persecution comes up and it actually accomplishes the will and purposes of God. And we see this all through the Bible. Think about this. Remember, there was a woman, her name was Mary. She was a virgin. She was pregnant. You know what I'm talking about? She had a man named Joseph, who they were supposed to get married, and she was pregnant. And she was like 9 months pregnant, and then all of a sudden, a census comes. They want everyone to go to their family's home of origin to be numbered for the census. Now, Mary was 9 months pregnant. And from where they were in Nazareth down to Bethlehem was about 70 miles. And they went on either donkey or camel. Now, I remember when Lynn was 9 months pregnant. Sorry, sweetie. But it's like taking her from the house to the hospital wasn't fun. And that was like a mile and a half. Could you imagine taking your 9 months pregnant wife on the back of a donkey 70 miles? I mean, talk about a negative life experience. I mean, can you imagine those like Joe? I mean, Mary, it's got to be hard. I mean, she's all pregnant, ready to go. Can you imagine poor Joseph? Can't you go any faster? I'm pregnant. I mean, can you stop hitting those bumps, Joseph? You can imagine what this was like. 70 miles. And you might think, what a terrible life experience. But why did that happen? Because the Messiah needed to be born in Bethlehem. Brothers and sisters, listen. You right now might be going through a severe trial. Things going on that's just a mess. As believers in God, as followers of Jesus, it's purposeful. God is going to use this negative event, these negative experiences, things that you didn't ask for, you didn't wish for, you can't wait to get rid of them when they're gone. But He's using them to fulfill His purposes in your life. And the question is are you willing to believe that? Are you willing not just to wish them away, but to embrace them and say, God, I don't want this. But Lord, will you bear the fruit of my life that you want to bear in this negative experience? Because this persecution, which was horrible for the early church, actually put them right in the center of the will of God. Because now the church wasn't staying in Jerusalem. It was now going out exactly like Jesus had told them that they were supposed to do. Can we fathom the reality that God doesn't only bless us with positive experiences, but that God blesses us with negative experiences? In my Bible and in yours, there's a verse called Romans 8:28. It sits right between Romans 8:27 and 8:29 every single time. And you know what it says? For all things work together for good for those who love God and for those who are called according to His purpose. And you know what all means? It means all. It means all. All things work together for good. And what's good is it says for those who love God and for those who are called according to His purpose. That end clause always used to scare me. You know why? For those who love God. Well, my love for God's a little fickle. You know what I mean? I kind of feel like a teenager sometimes with God. You know what I mean? Like, I love you, I love you, I love you. I can't stand you anymore. I can't do this anymore. Don't you feel like that? Sometimes you feel so much love for God. Other times you feel like, I'm not so sure about you, God. Like, there's a cooler guy on the block or whatever. Sometimes we feel like our love for God is all over the place. But not only for those who love God, but what? For those who are called according to His purpose. And you know what? Even though our love is fickle and all over the place, the calling of God is not. So even though my love is all over the place, God's calling stands. The gifts and calling of God, it says in the Scriptures, are what? They're irrevocable. They're without repentance. God's calling in our lives for us to walk with Jesus makes assuredly the reality that all things are working together for good. So no matter what goes on, no matter how horrific, no matter how bad, no matter how heartbreaking it is, we know that this negative experience is purposeful for God's glory